Welcome, Angela.
So nice to see you, Kimberly.
Well, it's so funny. We were talking. It's like, when did we last see each other? And it was 2009. We were babies.
That's hard to believe. Both busy yoga studio owners at that time.
Oh my gosh. What year did you start your studio?
2005.
2005. So I was 1999. So we were both like fairly early on in the world. Yeah. Well, so tell us about your journey from, I think of you as yoga and wine, but your journey from like yoga and wine, which was huge. It seemed like that had something that really took off to, creating this skincare brand, Lola Arnao, like such different industries, but yet I'm sure there's so many applicable pieces.
Absolutely. No, so much in common. Well, it's been a really interesting and wonderful journey. I sold my studio in 2018, and I loved being a yoga studio owner. I loved the community that I created, which I'm sure you did as well. And that's something I miss on a regular basis. I miss that feeling of, being with students after class with a cup of tea and learning about their day and how their yoga practice helped them. So I've missed that, but I think it was the right choice for me. I had done it for 13 years and it was kind of time to move on to the next thing. And as you mentioned, yoga and wine was a big part of what I did. I taught yoga and wine retreats all over the world, Italy, Sonoma, Napa, and of course came out to see you in DC, which was a lot of fun. And that wine piece of things for me was something that I'd always had a lot of interest in. So after I sold the studio, I was a certified sommelier at that point, and I had some adventures. I worked for a while in Montana at a luxury resort, kind of in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of actually a very beautiful wilderness area in the Bitterroot Mountains. If anyone is a fan of Yellowstone, it's the town that Yellowstone was filmed in. So it was quite an adventure. Lots of real life cowboys, and again, a really amazing adventure. And I was there for almost 2 years, and then moved out here to where I'm located now, to the Willamette Valley of Oregon. So the wine country of Oregon, and worked harvests, and then worked at a winery as the director of hospitality for a bit. And I loved all of that. And wine is a huge part of how I grew up. So I grew up in a Sicilian family, the daughter of 2 chefs. And so food and wine was always part of my life and something that was on the table. And I think that it was also a way to slow down. And that was part of yoga and wine, that idea that you can slow down and have meaningful moments with something that's very everyday, like a glass of wine or something delicious to eat, or slowing down to listen to our breath. So I think that's been the running thread through a lot of what I've done. So worked in the wine industry for a number of years. And I think I was really itching to get back to entrepreneurship. I love being an entrepreneur. I love the fact that as a woman entrepreneur, I can take my destiny into my own hands. Like, that's really important to me. And I think I've learned that is a really important value for me, being able to kind of control my own destiny as an entrepreneur. So I decided that I wanted to go back to entrepreneurship. And I also realized that purpose-driven entrepreneurship was incredibly important to me. I wanted to do something that I felt like mattered. And I moved out here to Oregon in 2020 in the midst of the terrible fires. So that was a really transformational experience for me. When I moved out here in August of 2020, and the fires started in September. And it felt really apocalyptic. I was working harvest, and the skies were bright orange. It was challenging, to breathe. I was working outside during harvest, so 12-hour days outside. And it just kind of course, the environment was always something that was important to me, but it became much more like real and visceral and just much more important to me. So I kind of knew I wanted to do something that had a positive environmental impact. And then, like so many business ideas, this came about just with the things that I was looking for in the marketplace that I couldn't find. So I have super sensitive skin, and I was looking for something, specifically I was looking for a shave product that wasn't in plastic and that didn't irritate my skin. And for many years, every product I've used has left my skin red, irritated, bumps. And, it kind of occurred to me that why are we as women putting up with products that leave our skin feeling miserable? So I was at Target one day and I looked around, and there was an aisle full of products for men And there was this teeny little area with products for women. And it was basically the same products that I had used since I was a teenager and started shaving. And I left and chatted with my mom. And my mom was a chef for many years, 40 years, and she's now my business partner. And she went in the kitchen and just started whipping up some different things. We started experimenting, and it was just a fun thing for us to do. But in the end, we created a product, a solid shave bar. And that was the first product that we launched with Lola Arnao. And you use a brush to create the lather. Typically in shaving creams, the foam is created through chemicals and butane and comes housed in plastic or, plastic and metal that's not really recyclable. So we started sharing it with friends and family, and a business was born. And I quit my day job and stepped back into the entrepreneurial journey, which, can have its challenges. You've been there, done that. But it feels really good to be back to entrepreneurship. And I think it circles back to everything I've done in my career, which is really about slowing down and making meaningful moments with something, as innocuous as like shaving our legs, can we turn that into something that is meaningful and has purpose and doesn't harm us and doesn't harm the environment?
Which leads me right into my next question, which as I'm looking over here, that is why I've got my notes. But, all this idea, right, around slow beauty. And as you said, kind of the aisles, like huge for men and not for women. I'm like, well, that's not the norm. And I'm like, oh, because she's talking shaving, right? And
Exactly.
so, yeah, it's like, so can you just describe for us what is slow beauty, right? And how can we nourish ourselves at home? And I love this idea of getting curious, like, why do we use this product? Why is this product always made this way? Is there another way to do it? It's a perfect way to launch a business.
Yeah, I think when I opened my yoga studio, I couldn't find the studio I wanted to practice at. Actually, I could have just gone to DC because that was a studio I would have enjoyed practicing at. But in my community, I couldn't find the studio that, had a lovely cup of tea after class and had a sense of community. And for me, I loved practicing to music. So I wanted some classes that had music and some classes that didn't. And I couldn't find that. And so I think that's, again, with Lola Arnao Beauty, that was something that I couldn't find the products I was looking for. So slow beauty, I think a great way to start understanding what it is what it isn't. And I think most people have heard the term fast fashion and the idea that that's something that, has a negative impact on the environment. And for me, when I think of fast fashion or fast beauty, it's something that encourages overconsumption. So we always need more. We always need the newest trend. And it's also, fast fashion is brands that don't take sustainability into how they produce products, how they sell products, and how they distribute them. So some of the slow beauty stuff started for me a few years ago when I started following some slow fashion bloggers and YouTubers. Like, I love Audrey Coyne. She's fantastic. You'd love her because she definitely has a little bit of a French, I know you're a Francophile, a little French feel, but Audrey Coyne and Alyssa Beltempo, I started following both of them, and they talked, and I started overhauling my closet because I realized I was often purchasing things, like I didn't have something for an event and I was purchasing things and not utilizing them for the long haul. So I started first with sort of transforming my closet and really buying pieces thinking about how they were made, thinking about pieces that lasted for the long haul. And I know you've, produced and sold pieces like that can work with many different things that are versatile. So I think coming up with that capsule closet was an entry point for me into slow beauty, because then I started looking at what was on my counter. I'm like, why do I need 15 steps? Can I simplify? And who am I purchasing from? And are they cruelty free? Are they clean? So I think it was a combination of that. And then using products that actually often hurt my skin, and thinking that was normal. I have very sensitive skin. And through the course of building Lola Arnao, I've pared down my skincare routine dramatically, and my skin has thanked me for it. I remember there were times when I had like the 15-step beauty care routine, and I've really simplified. And so that's a part of slow beauty too. But I think, again, first and foremost is the idea that less is more. Like right now, my nighttime facial skincare routine, I cleanse with an oil cleansing balm, and then I spritz with rose water, and then I use plum oil, which I am obsessed with. And we're actually debuting it in the fall, so I'm super excited to share it with people. It's fragrance free, but it smells like marzipan. It just has a natural smell. It's so lovely. And then I do a little bit of facial massage. And actually, I think some of that less is more. I spent a month in Paris when I was thinking about selling. A month in Paris is always going to change your life, right? I mean, I don't have to sell that to you, Kimberly. But I spent a month in Paris in 2016. It was kind of when that first kernel of thinking of selling my studio had popped up. And I wanted the space to really like sit back and think about that. And I was dealing with breakouts and it was very frustrating. And I went to the Darphin Institute in Paris and I got a facial. I treated myself to a facial. And they did this incredible facial massage. And the lady who did my facial basically gave me a strongly worded lecture and said, you're using too many products and you're using things that are way too harsh. Like you need to be much more gentle with your skin. And she taught me how to do facial massage and how to cleanse my skin using lukewarm water and just to slow down. So I think part of that less is more concept goes back to the French ideas of beauty, using really high quality products, using less of them, and being very gentle with the routine you create for yourself. So that's part of slow beauty. I think another part is to just bring mindfulness to your daily routine. And that goes back to all the things we loved about yoga, right? That you slow down and you breathe while you're doing it and you take the time to be mindful about what you're creating. So I think that's one whole piece of slow beauty. And that's how we create rituals that feel good around beauty for ourselves. And then I think the other part is really slowly starting to make our routines more sustainable and making them cleaner, because there are really a lot of ingredients in our beauty products that we're not aware of that are harmful to our skin, they're harmful to our health. And our skin is the largest organ in our body. So everything we put on our skin gets absorbed and makes a difference in our health. So for Lola Arnao, we avoid a lot of ingredients. For example, we're fragrance free. And I love fragrance. I'll spritz on perfume and use perfume. But on my skin on a regular basis, I try to keep as many products fragrance free as possible. And that is almost impossible to find. Almost all fragrances, almost all beauty products have some level of fragrance in them. And I get it. Like it's nice, like the plum oil. I love that it smells nice, but it doesn't contain an added fragrance. And fragrance is one of the ingredients in our skincare that is not regulated at all. They don't have to list the ingredients. So if you see fragrance, you really have no idea what that contains. And there's a lack of transparency with that. We also avoid microplastics in all of our products. We avoid sulfates, parabens, all the things that can affect our health and affect specifically our hormonal health, which is really important for women, but for anyone. You don't want something that is going to affect your hormonal health or potentially have carcinogenic qualities. So I think it's about finding products that are both sustainable and clean, which are, two different parts of the equation. And, as I say this, it can be really overwhelming because I remember when the light bulb clicked for me about what I wanted to change in just my personal self-care routine. I went into my bathroom and looked around and started reading labels, which I already do with food, any food that I put in my body. But I started reading labels. I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. And I don't know how to make these changes. So I think a really important principle of slow beauty is to slow down and realize you don't have to overhaul your entire beauty routine all at once. What I would do is when I ran out of a product, I would then try to make a change to a more sustainable and a cleaner product at that time, instead of trying to overhaul everything all at once. And that's something that I think is important too. The least sustainable thing we can do is go out and just throw everything away. I think to slowly start to incorporate these changes into our routine can make a really big impact. And I aim for about 80% sustainable and clean in my routine. I would like to have 100%, but I try to keep, to think of that in my mind. But even going for 50% sustainable or clean makes a huge difference. Even changing one product, switching from lotion that comes in a plastic bottle to a solid lotion bar, that's a huge swap. So don't be, I think that's another part of slow beauty is do this slowly. Don't be hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Just make the changes that seem realistic for you. If you have a facial serum that you absolutely adore and maybe it's not 100% clean or comes in plastic, like put that to the side and switch the thing that you don't care for. That's kind of the definition of slow beauty. Kind of a long, long definition, but that's what I would consider slow beauty.
No, but it's helpful, right? Because I think you saying, all right, yes, look at the ingredients, right? I'm even looking here. I've got this great, it's,
Oh, is that Love and Planet?
yes, I love Love and Planet. And
They
it's
have
a
nice things.
rose. They have nice
Yes.
things. But, it's like, okay, to read the ingredients, I would need glasses. But, it's like thinking about, okay, what are the brands that do tend toward the clean, right? And then also you don't need to throw out everything. As you said, it's like, okay, once you're done with something that's say in plastic, which I'm sure this is recycled plastic, knowing them, but it's like, once you are done with something, it's like, okay, what could I replace it with that would be maybe a better fit for my overall lifestyle? And I'm curious, because you mentioned your evening routine, like what about your morning routine? And are there any things that you feel like, okay, these are essentials? You mentioned rose water spray. And
I love rose water.
I even have it on my desk. Like I love rose water spray, but I can never remember when to use it. When are you supposed to use it in the process? So anyway, if you could just speak to like, what are the essentials that we should all have in our cabinets?
Yes. So my morning routine is also pretty simple because oftentimes I'm going out to take care. I have 2 horses. I know, Kimberly, you're an animal lover, so that'll come up a bit. But so usually I am rushing out the door, and this is another thing I learned from my fabulous French facialist. She always suggested that you don't wash your face in the morning. So I spritz on rose water. I have, instead of using cotton pads that you throw away, I have recyclable cotton pads that I just throw in the washer with my washcloths and towels. So I cleanse with a little bit of rose water. And then I put on sunscreen. And I really like Organic Pharmacy's sunscreen. I don't know if it's 100% fragrance free, but it isn't something that irritates my skin, really clean ingredients. And that's about it. I kind of go out the door with that. Sometimes I use a vitamin C serum. The 2 active ingredients that I use are retinol and vitamin C. And I use them honestly kind of sporadically because they can be irritating to my skin. But I use the Youth to the People vitamin C serum. It has vitamin C and it has a little bit of caffeine. So if I'm feeling like my eyes are puffy, I just kind of tap it around my eyes in the morning. Sometimes I'll do that under my sunscreen, but that's it. Cleanse with rose water, potentially a little vitamin C serum, and then sunscreen, and I'm out the door. If I'm doing more of a beauty routine where I have to, be on a Zoom call or actually in front of people, then I do the rose water, the vitamin C serum. And lately I've been using a few drops of plum oil. Plum oil is magic stuff. You can use it morning and night. I'll have to send you a bottle. You'd really like it. I'll send you a pre-release bottle.
Awesome. I've added it to my list. I'm like, I need me some plum oil.
It's magic stuff. And then I've been using the Ilia serum, which is really nice. Ilia is another great clean beauty brand. And they have a serum that it's basically like a foundation, but it has sunscreen and it's just sort of a liquid foundation. And I'll put that on with a sponge and then do my makeup routine and kind of go from there. But I try to keep it pretty simple. And I've noticed my skin looks a lot when I focus. Again, this is a very French concept of beauty. French beauty tends to focus on skincare versus makeup. And so the more that I switch to thinking about skincare more than makeup, I feel like my skin looks better and I look better. But I think those are some of the essentials, like cleanse your face at night. In the morning, be really gentle, either splash a little water or spritz rose water. And then make sure that somewhere in your routine is a nice moisturizing oil. And I think that's something, as I've gone from my 20s and 30s into my 40s, I've really switched to a lot more oils. And I used to be scared of that because I thought it would make my skin break out. But oils are magical. They really are concentrated, which makes them good for the environment. You're using something that's highly concentrated and doesn't have a lot of water added to it or a lot of other chemicals. It's just, I use a lot of pure oils, plum oil, jojoba, meadow foam. I'll use those in different ways in my routine. And then sunscreen, retinol once in a while. I think that's kind of all we need for most of us.
Yeah, I love the reminder about not, washing, not like doing a full cleanser kind of in the morning. And I think I actually heard that from an interview I did with Madame Chic, who wrote all those books. And she mentioned that, and her like French kind of, woman that she was staying with that had recommended that. And I thought, oh, because every morning I used my Cetaphil. And then I'm reading like that Cetaphil is actually, something that was recommended by dermatologists as an adolescent is, not getting all the love anymore. So I just thought it was interesting. So now I use a vitamin C cleanser at night, and then just splash my face, and then add my serums, and then moisturizer, and then sunscreen. It's a whole process, but I love kind of your simplified version, and I want to get more rose water spritzer into my life. So
yeah, and you had started the question asking when to use it. So I use it in the morning and at night, but I also think you can use it as a setting spray with your makeup. So just after you do your makeup, do a quick spritz, and it'll help your makeup set better also.
Yeah, because I didn't know, do you do it like after a serum, before a serum, after a moisturizer, before? I wasn't sure, like in the process, and maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter a bit. So you usually do it in terms of the weight of whatever you're using. So you start cleanse first, of course. So you have a nice palette to put everything on. And then you go in terms of weight. So since rose water is liquid, you do liquid first, then you would do any liquidy serums next. Then you would do, if you had like a moisturizer or oil, that would go on top of that. So think of it, if it's more watery, it goes first. If it's more like an oil or heavy cream, it goes last.
Perfect. Totally. That makes sense. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. No, it is confusing. I wanted to add something else about slow beauty because I know it's something that's important to you. And when we're trying to switch to more of a slow beauty routine, I think it's also really important to think about your own values. Like something that's really important to me as an animal lover is to choose products that are cruelty-free. And we're actually certified cruelty-free by Leaping Bunny. And we did that before we even launched. And that's expensive. It's not, actually, they're pretty reasonable, but going through a certification process is an expense that I think is challenging for any small business. But I thought it was really, really important. And that's something that's super important to me. And I know is to you because of your, love of animals. So think about the things that are, for your listeners, think about what's important to you. Maybe it's really important to you that you buy from corporations that are B Corps, or maybe it's really important that your products are vegan, or, whatever those things are that are important to you. Let your beauty routine reflect your values. And again, that cruelty-free piece is really important because to me, it doesn't feel good to use a product that I know has had anything to do with testing on animals.
Absolutely.
You're on the same page.
Yeah, no, it's such a good reminder. And I'm just like, oh, does this have the Leaping Bunny? I mean, I'm sure it is like, having those logos and, it just helps you feel like, okay, yeah, like this is good. And, another thing that I like to look for also, and because I'm a member and I was through the studio too, is 1% for the planet. Right?
Yes, which you're members of.
Of course you are.
I love 1% for the planet.
I do too. Yeah, I did it through the studio, and now I've done it again through Tranquility du Jour. And it's just good to know, like, again, are the values of this company in alignment with mine, right? And then you can just make decisions from there. And it's nice to just be able to look at like a little icon to get some feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the certifications are important, and just doing some digging. Like there's a beauty company whose makeup I love, and I think that they're cruelty-free, but they're not certified. There's some companies that their parent company maybe does animal testing, but they don't. And so I think that's a good place where as consumers, we can put some pressure on. I'm going to do a little bit more research because I love this company's, they do some great sticks, like foundation sticks and highlighter sticks. But I want to make sure before I promote them that I know exactly what they stand for and what the parent company stands for. And if not, like for consumers, don't be afraid to send a note on social media, on someone's Instagram account and say, hey, can you tell me more about this? And also, is your parent company cruelty free? Have you considered certification? Because I think that all of this change that we're talking about, whether it's going to better packaging or going to more solid products that are plastic free, or going cruelty free, all of that is going to come from consumers and small businesses and rise up. And I think it's really important for us to be conscious consumers.
Absolutely. It's such a good reminder. And before I ask you my last question, Angela, I'd love to know kind of what's next for you. So you've developed this line and you're moving and you have horses and
Yes.
like what's next on the horizon? Or are you just like, I am taking it one day at a time? Or do you have the plans to launch more products? I need your plum oil.
Yes, I do. So we started with the shave bar, and then we launched this product, which was our solid lotion bar. And that's, with solid, so this is the equivalent of the bottle of lotion that you showed. This is the equivalent of it, but there's zero packaging. So it's when you're done, it's done. So we launched this pretty recently and we've had good feedback from it. And our products up till now have been body care. And I think that's partly because it's easier to create, or it felt easier to us to create body care products that were solid. But we're moving into some facial care with the plum oil coming in the fall, which I'm so excited about. And that's like, I want to build this really slowly with products that I am legitimately using and that I don't just like, but I absolutely love. And I'm, very excited about. But I'm hoping to do the same thing with a cleanser and perhaps even some organically sourced rose water down the road. But some of the things that I'm using in the facial care world is kind of what's next. And yeah, we'll see from there what comes after that. But that's kind of next for Lola, and just continuing to try to grow this into a national brand. And I think that's very different. You and I both had bricks and mortars that I think had some national impact. Yours certainly with, your books and all the things you did from that. But I'm excited to try to grow this into a national brand. And then as far as personally, I'm in process of moving out to a small farm. Actually, my mom and I just purchased a small farm here in the Willamette Valley, and we have our headquarters for Lola, which are in a renovated barn. It's a really beautiful space, and we're making all of our products there. And I was just saying to my mom yesterday, because we're in process of moving onto the property, but we've been producing our products there for a little while. And I look out the window and I can see my 2 horses, and I wouldn't trade it for a penthouse view in the middle of Manhattan. It's like the best place to work ever. So I'm excited to see what we do with the farm. And that's kind of the next big project, because I do want it to be a working farm. And we're in the process of testing soils and seeing what we're going to grow there. Oregon has kind of a burgeoning olive farming business. And so we're thinking maybe olive trees, but we need to test the soil and kind of see what will grow there. So that's kind of what's next. Lots of things. Moving, becoming a farmer is kind of next on the list. So I'm really excited about all of it. It's funny, when I sold the studio, I really didn't know what was next for me. And I feel like the last 5 years have really been, for all of us, right, with COVID and just everything that's happened in the world, have been this transitional time. And it's been really nice to see. I think that we can change, we can be in a life and it's a perfectly good life, but maybe there's something inside of us that calls to try something new and to see where life takes us. And like, we can do that. We can change and create new futures for ourselves, even though it's scary sometimes. And so it's been a really cool journey. It's been interesting to see where life has taken me.
Yeah, for sure. And before we started recording, listeners, we were talking about having sold our studios. Like I sold in 2017 and then she sold in 2018, and how, a lot of people have said, oh my gosh, you're so lucky, or you're so smart. And it's like, oh, honey, we had no idea about a pandemic.
Absolutely.
How? But we are so lucky. Oh my gosh, because I don't know how. I know yoga studios are still going and what have you, but so many small businesses closed, and it's heartbreaking, to
Absolutely
see.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
No, definitely. There was no plan for that. Of course, we didn't know what was coming down the road. And it's been really inspiring for me to watch other studio owners who pivoted along the way and did classes online, which I love taking. I love the fact that now you can take classes online, from so many different studios across the country. So it's been interesting to see how resourceful the yoga community is. And even though I'm not a part of it anymore, I'm always here rooting for yoga studios and wellness centers to keep going, and for small business. And I think, it's so important that we support small businesses and support businesses whose values are aligned with us. I think if we want to create the world that we want to live in, we have to support the people who are busy doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And, just you saying kind of about the online classes, it's funny because, I haven't taken an in studio yoga class since right before the pandemic. I remember going on a day when you kind of shouldn't go. It was like things are about to shut down. And I'm like, it looks like the class is still happening. I just want to get one last class in. And then I go and they had a sign on the door and they're like, no. And I was like, okay, then the world shut down, right? But
I was
like,
in France when the world shut down.
Oh my God, that's a good place to be.
It was, actually, I contemplated just staying.
Yeah, right.
But that wasn't the right thing to do.
But it's funny. So it's like that was my last, my last try at an in-person yoga class. Before then, it was like 2 days before. But ballet, I've only taken maybe five, maybe not even five, I'd say five max ballet classes since the pandemic hit in person. They've all been virtual for like 3.5 years, of hardcore, 3 years and however many months, but hardcore, like almost daily ballet classes. And I mainly take with a studio in New York. So it's like we didn't have those opportunities before the pandemic. And it really opened up, as you said, to be able to take from teachers all over, the world, really, and it truly is a gift, but what a shift. What a shift.
Do you miss that? I ask because I do sometimes, like that feeling of being in community in person in a class. I'm so grateful for all of those other things that kept us safe, but I do miss that.
Yeah, like being in a studio with other people.
Yeah, that vibe.
Yeah, yes. I do. It was very special, but it's different when you own the studio, as you know, because when you go in, I noticed everything that wasn't quite like I wanted it to be. That was like my signature, not something I'm proud of, but it's how I'm really wired. And so even during yoga the class, like I loved the class, but then, people would want something or they'd ask something, even though like I wasn't teaching, I wasn't working the front desk, but people had, questions or whatever. Again, all lovely, especially at the beginning. But as it went on, like I remember at the beginning, Angela, I used to leave my cell phone on the voicemail for the studio in case anyone needed anything. Like, what is your yoga emergency? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And so, there are yoga emergencies.
Oh my God, there are, let's be honest, but they didn't need to call me. And so it's just like, as the years went on, that constant being needed or seeing, things, it's like, and I've learned we're evolutionarily wired to notice what's wrong. So I give myself a little bit of grace there.
Absolutely, as you should.
But it's really hard when you feel like the business is a reflection of you. And, you have plants with yellow leaves. That's a small thing, but freaking killed me, like literally killed me. And so I was like, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I really, taking classes, it got to where it was even painful for me, And so when I got back into yoga after selling the studio, I still went to the studio a bit, and then it was just awkward. So I started going to another studio, and yeah, it was lovely, but I wasn't craving community. I was craving anonymity. And I just wanted to like be in the back and leave as soon as the class was over. And not because I'm sure everyone wasn't amazing, but I just needed my space that I had not had for almost 20 years,
I resonate with everything you're saying resonates with me. I understand exactly what you mean. And I think that it is nice to be able to practice kind of anonymously and just pop in and get what you need from the practice. And I am 100% with you with the plants. For me, it was often the HVAC system. Like, I'm like, is the temperature right? Is the temperature wrong?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
It's really hard to turn that off. I think the joy for me was coming in and just feeling like you'd created a space where, that moment where you look around and you see everyone in Shavasana and they're chilling out and that they came in feeling really differently. That was the most rewarding thing for me. But I agree, it can be really draining to feel that you're in charge and, all of the things you just said. It's like anything, right? There's pros and cons, but for me, I felt like I had just sort of done what I wanted to do with the studio. And it really felt like it was time for the next adventure. I didn't think the next adventure would take me to Montana and, all the places it did. But I think that's why we have to constantly be reinventing ourselves, because we need different things at different points in our lives.
Totally. And I think you raised such a great point. I mean, there were so many times where I was like, how the hell did this happen? Right. I mean, it was like beautiful. But when you get to the point where you can't feel or see that anymore, that's when you know, no matter what it is, a business you created, a relationship you're in, a city you live in, that you're just like, this is there's more cons than pros now. Right. And that's when I think it's good to be like, I have to step back, even though all of this is so amazing and I want it to keep going. I just need to protect myself, And so it's a gift to be able to recognize that.
Well, because we all have so much fear about jumping into the unknown. You've done that. And I think our identity, especially in American culture, our identity becomes our jobs so much. Like you were Kimberly Wilson, the yoga studio owner. And I think that's really tough to let go of. And it's tough to see ourselves in different roles. And I think that's been one gift of my journey is I've been a lot of different things the last 20 years. I've been a sommelier who's on the floor helping people. I've been a yoga studio owner. I'm a skincare brand founder now. I mean, those are all very different identities. And I think the gift of that is realizing that those are actually not my identity. My identity is myself. And those are things that I do, not who I am. And I think once you kind of realize that, which has taken me a really long time to realize, but I think when you realize, and I think the universe sent me in these different directions to learn that, I think when you realize that, it's really freeing because you realize, the things we do, they can fail, they can succeed, but that doesn't affect who I am as a person. But that's been a lesson that took me a little while to learn for sure.
It's a journey. So it's beautiful. Well, my last question for you is the name of the podcast, of course, Tranquility du Jour. And so how are you finding tranquility in your days right now?
It's my horses. It's animals. It's their beautiful, joyful energy and being able to look out the window. Although I'm worried I'm not going to get any work done because I noticed yesterday I was in a bit of a procrastination mood. And I'm like, okay, well, I can go give Espresso a carrot. She definitely needs a carrot right now. Like, I don't need to do this thing that's on my to-do list. But it's pure joy for me. It really is. And I got my first horse, Espresso. I'd gone through a not very fun breakup and discovered horses. And when I was around her, nothing else really mattered. And I think there's something about caretaking for animals that really brings a lot of joy. Like I can be having the worst day, but I have to go feed my horses twice a day. I have to take care of them. And once I'm there, it doesn't matter the weather. It doesn't matter what's going on. Everything else falls away. And, I love that my second horse, Romeo, I call his name and he neighs like in the movies, which horses do not do. But he neighs like a movie star horse and runs over, and it's just pure joy and tranquility.
Love it. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here with us today. It's a treat to see you again.
It is. I'm so happy to see you, Kimberly, and I'm happy to see you thriving. And I love your podcast. I am a regular listener, and yeah, I love the work you're doing. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.